Plato did a lot to change the way we think about the world, in everything from mathematics to ethics to logic. But perhaps one of his most influential contributions to philosophy was the theory of the forms. In basic terms, Plato's theory of forms asserts that the physical world is not really the real world. Instead, ultimate reality exists beyond our physical world. Plato discusses this theory in a few different dialogues, including the Republic and the Phaedo. It is also likely that Plato inherited some of this theory from his mentor, Socrates. Philosophically, Plato was influenced by a tradition of skepticism, including the skepticism of his teacher Socrates, who is also the star of Plato's dialogues. What was obvious to many of the early Greek philosophers was that we live in a world which is not an easy source of true, eternal, unchanging knowledge. The world is constantly undergoing change. The seasons reflect change. Nothing is ever permanent. Buildings crumble, people, animals, and trees live and then die. Even the present is deceiving. Our senses of sight, touch, and taste can let us down from time to time. What I think of as sweet at one time may seem sour the next. Heraclitus, a pre Socratic philosopher, claimed that we can never step into the same river twice. In his Socratic dialogues, Plato argues that because the material world is changeable, it is also unreliable. But Plato also believed that this is not the whole story. Behind this unreliable world of appearances is a world of permanence and reliability. Plato calls this more real world the world of forms or ideas. Plato's philosophy asserts that there are two realms, the physical realm and the spiritual realm. The physical one is the material stuff we see and interact with on a daily basis. It is changing and imperfect, as we all know all too well. This spiritual realm, however, exists beyond the physical one. Plato calls this spiritual realm the realm of forms, also called the realm of ideas or realm of ideals. Plato's theory of forms asserts that the physical realm is only a shadow or image of the true reality of the realm of forms. The thing is, while Plato refers to these mysterious forms repeatedly, sometimes even discussing them at length, he never tells us exactly what he means. As a result, in the centuries since Plato, philosophers have disagreed about the nuances of Plato's theory. But most of them have agreed that his theory of forms is a way of thinking about the relationship between two things. On the one hand, there is the messy, untidy world that we access through our sense experience. And on the other hand, there is the world of ideals that we access through the intellect. So, what are these forms according to Plato? The forms are abstract, perfect, unchanging concepts or ideals that transcend time and space. They exist in the realm of the forms. Even though the forms are abstract, that doesn't mean that they are not real. In fact, the forms are more real than any individual physical object or objects. So, concepts like roundness, beauty, redness, whiteness, justice, or goodness are forms, and thus they are commonly capitalized. Individual objects like a red book, a round ball, a beautiful person, a just action, or a good person reside in the physical realm and are simply different examples of the forms. Take, for example, a perfect triangle as it might be described by a mathematician. This would be a description of the form or idea of a triangle. Plato says such forms exist in an abstract state but independent of minds in their own realm. Considering this idea of a perfect triangle, we might also be tempted to take pencil and paper and draw it. our attempts will, of course, fall short. Plato would say that people's attempts to recreate the form will end up being a pale facsimile of the perfect idea, just as everything in this world is an imperfect representation of its perfect form. The idea or form of a triangle and the drawing we come up with is a way of comparing the perfect and imperfect. How good our drawing is will depend on our ability to recognize the form of triangle. Although no one has ever seen a perfect triangle, for Plato this is not a problem. If we can conceive the idea or form of a perfect triangle in our mind, then the idea of triangle must exist. The forms are not limited to geometry. According to Plato, for any conceivable thing or property, there is a corresponding form, a perfect example of that thing or property. The list is almost inexhaustible. Tree, house, mountain, man, woman, ship, cloud, horse, dog, table, and chair would all be examples of independently existing abstract, perfect ideas. Plato says that true and reliable knowledge rests only with those who can comprehend the true reality behind the world of everyday experience. In order to perceive the world of the forms, individuals must undergo a difficult education. This is also true of Plato's philosopher kings, who are required to perceive the form of good in order to be well informed rulers. We talked about this in the Republic series. We must be taught to recall this knowledge of the forms, since it is already present in a person's mind, due to their soul apparently having been in the world of the forms before they were born. Someone wanting to do architecture, for example, would be required to recall knowledge of the forms of building, house, brick, etc. The fact that this person may have absolutely no idea about building design is irrelevant. On this basis, if you can't recall the necessary knowledge, then you're obviously not suited to be an architect or a king. Not everyone is suited to be king in the same way as not everyone is suited to mathematics. Conversely, a very high standard in a particular trade suggests knowledge of its forms. The majority of people cannot be educated about the nature of the forms because the forms cannot be discovered through education, only recalled. To explain our relationship to the world of the forms, in the Republic, Plato uses the analogy of people who spend their whole lives living in a cave, and all they ever see are shadows on the walls created by their campfire. Compared with the reality of the world of the forms, real physical objects and events are analogous to being only shadows. Plato also takes the opportunity to use the cave analogy as a political statement. Only the people who have the ability to step out into the sunlight and see the true reality should rule, the true reality being the forms. Clearly, Plato was not a fan of Greek democracy. No doubt his aristocratic background and the whims of Athenian politics contributed to his view, especially as the people voted to execute his mentor Socrates, as we talked about in the video discussing the apology of Socrates. Plato leaves no doubt that only special people are fit to rule. Who are the special people who can recognize the forms? For Plato, the answer is straightforward. The ideal ruler is a philosopher king, because only philosophers have the ability to discern the forms. Plato goes on to say that it is only when such a person comes to power that the citizens of the state will have the opportunity to step out of the cave and see the light. So this was a quick summary of the theory of the forms by Plato. If you want to know more about the philosopher king that I refer to in this video, You may check out the videos I made on the Republic by Plato.